My name is Harrison Cole. I'm 71 years old, and I just learned that the only child I ever raised is a monster. I returned from Vancouver after 2 weeks at my mother's deathbed, only to find my wife Diane locked in our basement. She was dehydrated, filthy, and borderline delirious, padlocked in the dark for 14 days. When I asked her who did this, she whispered one name: Jenny, our daughter. I did not call the police. I called my lawyer. And that night, I started the process of taking back every single thing I ever gave her. The cab ride from Hartsfield-Jackson Airport felt longer than the flight from Vancouver. 2 weeks, 14 days of sitting in a sterile hospital room, holding my 90-year-old mother's hand, watching her fade away. I was exhausted down to my bones. The flight attendant had to wake me when we landed. I paid the driver, grabbed my single carry-on, and walked up the pathway to the home Diane and I had shared for 25 years. It was just after 8 p.m. The house was dark. I frowned. Diane always left the porch light on for me. Always. She knew I was coming home tonight. I fumbled for my keys, the metal cold against my skin. The lock turned, and I pushed the door open. "Diane," I called out. The silence that answered was absolute heavy, dead. Not the comfortable quiet of an empty house, but the silence of absence. The air felt stale. "Diane, I'm home," I called again, louder this time. Nothing. A knot of unease tightened in my gut. I walked through the living room. The mail was piled on the small table by the door, unopened. Odd. Diane never let the mail pile up. I went into the kitchen. The coffee pot was clean and dry. No dishes in the sink. It looked unused. My heart started to pound a low, heavy beat. Maybe she went out. Maybe she forgot I was coming home. I walked to the door leading to the garage, flipped the light switch. There it was, her blue sedan parked in its usual spot. She was home, but the house was silent. My mind raced. Did she fall in the shower? Did she have a stroke? I ran up the stairs, taking them 2 at a time, something my 71-year-old knees protested immediately. Our bedroom was empty. The bed was neatly made. The bathroom was empty. I checked the guest room. Empty. I went back downstairs, confusion turning into cold dread. Where could she be? I stood in the kitchen, trying to think, trying to make sense of it. Her car was here. Her purse was on the kitchen counter. Her keys were next to it. She was here. She had to be here. And then I heard it. Thump. It was faint, muffled, coming from below my feet. I froze. I stopped breathing, listening. Thump. Thump. It was coming from the basement. My blood turned to ice. I walked slowly toward the basement door at the end of the kitchen hallway. I reached for the knob, but my hand stopped. There was something on the door that shouldn't be there, a heavy-duty metal hasp, newly screwed into the door frame, and through it, a large brass padlock. My padlock. The one I kept in the garage for the outside shed. It was locked from the outside. I stared at it. My mind couldn't process what I was seeing. This was impossible. "Diane," I whispered, pressing my face against the door. "Diane, are you down there?" A sound came from the other side, a low, animal-like moan, a sound of pure misery. Then a frantic, weak rattling of the doorknob from the inside. Bang, bang, bang. Weak, desperate, muffled fists beating against the thick wood. "Diane!" I roared, panic finally breaking through my paralysis. I grabbed the padlock. It was solid. "I'm here. I'm getting you out." The flight from Vancouver was a gray blur. The hum of the tires on the highway was the only sound that pierced the fog of my exhaustion. 2 weeks, 14 days straight, sitting in a reclining chair that smelled of bleach and regret, holding my mother's frail, paper-thin hand. At 71, you understand that these goodbyes are part of life, but it doesn't make them easier. All I wanted was to be home to sit in my own armchair, drink a cup of coffee that didn't come from a hospital vending machine, and feel my wife Diane's hand on my shoulder. I paid the cab driver. The crinkle of bills was the loudest sound I'd heard in an hour. I grabbed my single carry-on. I travel light, always have, and walked up the cracked concrete path to our small brick rancher in the neighborhood I've lived in for 40 years. The first thing that hit me was the darkness. The porch light was off. I stopped, my key halfway to the lock. Diane knew I was coming. I had called her from the airport in Seattle during my layover. "I'll be home around 8, baby," I'd said. "Leave the light on for me." She'd laughed, that warm sound that always settled me. Always, Harry. Always. But the light was off. A flicker of irritation was quickly replaced by a prickle of unease. Maybe the bulb burned out. I fumbled for the keyhole in the dark, my fingers stiff and cold. The lock turned with a familiar click, and I pushed the door open. The house was silent. "Diane," I called out, dropping my bag by the door. "I'm home." The silence that answered was not the comfortable quiet of an empty house. It was a heavy, dead silence. The air felt stale, still. I flipped the entryway light switch. Nothing. I tried the living room lamp. Nothing. The power was out. I grunted, frustrated. Just what I needed. I pulled out my phone, the screen obnoxiously bright in the pitch black, and hit the light switch for the kitchen. It flickered on. The kitchen light worked, but nothing else. Strange. Maybe just a blown breaker for the living room. But the unease didn't go away. It deepened. "Diane," I called again, my voice louder now, echoing slightly in the hallway. I saw the mail piled on the small table by the door, a thick stack. Bills, junk mail, a few magazines. Diane never let the mail pile up. She was meticulous. It was a little ritual of hers, sorting it the moment she brought it in. This pile was at least a week old. My heart, which had been beating with the slow, tired rhythm of grief, gave a sudden hard kick. I walked into the kitchen. The coffee pot was clean and dry. The dish rack was empty. There was a faint sour smell in the air I couldn't place. I checked the fridge. It was humming. The light came on when I opened it. It was full of food groceries she must have bought right after I left. Most of it was now wilted. A container of milk was a week past its expiration date. She hadn't just gone out for the evening. She hadn't been here. My mind raced. A stroke. A fall. I ran to the garage door, my 71-year-old knees screaming in protest. I threw the door open. Her blue sedan was parked in its usual spot. My blood turned to ice. She was home. The car was here. Her purse was on the kitchen counter, right where she always left it. Her keys were next to it. She had not left this house. "Diane!" I roared the name, tearing from my throat. I sprinted up the short hallway to our bedroom. I didn't bother with the lights. I used my phone. The beam cut through the dark. The bed was neatly made. The bathroom was empty. I checked the guest room, my old office. Empty. Empty. I stumbled back to the kitchen, my mind refusing to connect the dots. She's here. Her car is here. Her purse is here. But the house is empty. It didn't make sense. I stood there, panting, the adrenaline of panic making me shake. I was alone in the silent, dark house. No, not silent. I heard something. Thump. I froze. I turned off my phone's light, plunging the house back into near darkness, straining my ears. It was faint, muffled. It came from below. Thump. Thump. It was coming from the basement. I walked slowly, deliberately toward the basement door at the end of the kitchen hallway. My heart was a drum against my ribs. Maybe a raccoon got in. A water pipe burst. I reached for the old brass doorknob. My fingers brushed against something new, something cold. Metal. I turned my phone light back on, aiming the beam at the door. My breath caught in my throat. A heavy-duty metal hasp had been screwed into the door and the frame. A new hasp. The screws were still shiny. And hanging through it was a large brass padlock, my padlock. The heavy-duty one I kept in the garage for the outside shed. The one I used to protect my expensive tools. It was locked from the outside. My mind shattered. This wasn't a raccoon. This wasn't a burst pipe. This was a prison. "Diane," I whispered, my voice trembling, pressing my face against the wood. "Diane, are you down there?" A sound came from the other side, a low, agonizing moan, a sound of pure misery that barely sounded human. Then a frantic, weak rattling of the doorknob from the inside. Bang, bang, bang. Muffled fists, weak and desperate, beating against the inside of the thick wood. "Diane!" I roared, blind panic taking over. I grabbed the padlock and pulled the metal biting into my hands, but it held firm. "I'm here, baby. I'm here. I'm getting you out." I didn't wait. I didn't think. I ran to the garage, my mind singular in its purpose. I grabbed the small sledgehammer I kept for projects. I ran back, raised it high over my head, and brought it down on the padlock with all the strength and rage my 71-year-old body possessed. The metal shrieked, but it didn't break. Bang, bang, bang. The weak sound from inside spurred me on again. I swung the hammer. The wood around the hasp splintered. Again. The hasp tore free from the door frame with a sound of ripping wood and tortured metal. The door flew open, slamming against the wall. The stench that hit me was overwhelming, the smell of sickness, of waste, of despair. It threw me back a step. "Diane!" I yelled into the darkness, my phone light cutting a path down the stairs, and the light found her. The beam of my phone light cut into the blackness, illuminating a nightmare. The smell hit me first, a gut-wrenching, sour stench of urine, waste, and decay that made me gag. It was the smell of a cage. The light found her. She was in the far corner, huddled on a pile of dirty blankets I didn't recognize. It was Diane, but it wasn't. This creature was skeletal. Her skin, normally warm and brown, was a pale, ashy gray, stretched tight over her cheekbones. Her hair was matted with filth. Her lips were cracked open and bleeding. She was wearing the same clothes I remembered her waving goodbye in 2 weeks ago, now stiff with grime. She didn't even look up at the light. She just flinched, curling tighter into a ball, making a low, terrified, whining sound. For a second, my mind simply broke. It refused to accept the reality of what I was seeing. This could not be my wife. This could not be my home. Around her, scattered on the damp concrete floor, were 3 empty plastic water bottles and 2 torn-open packages of store-brand cookies. That was it. That was what they had left her for 14 days. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't a kidnapping. This was a calculated, slow execution. They had left her just enough to prolong the agony to make her starve, to make her waste away in her own filth. Diane, I whispered. The name felt foreign in my mouth. At the sound of my voice, her head snapped up. Her eyes, wide and unseeing with terror, tried to focus on me. She didn't recognize me. She scrambled backward on the floor, crab walking away, her hands and feet slipping in the dirt until her back hit the cold cinder block wall. She was panting a dry, rasping sound. "No," she whimpered. "No more, please." The rage that filled me was so pure, so hot, it burned away the shock. I didn't care about the smell. I didn't care about the filth. I crossed the basement in 3 strides. "It's me, baby," I said, my voice breaking. "It's Harry. I'm home. I'm home." I reached for her. She screamed a thin, reedy shriek of pure animal fear. She raised her frail arms to block her face, as if expecting a blow. "I'm not going to hurt you," I said, slowing my movements. I knelt in the filth in front of her. "Diane, it's Harrison. It's your husband." I gently, so gently touched her arm. Her skin was cold. She stopped screaming. She just trembled, her entire body shaking violently. She slowly lowered her arms, her eyes peering at me, trying to see me in the dim light of the phone I'd set on the floor. "Harry," she breathed. The sound was like dry leaves scraping pavement. "It's me," I sobbed, the tears finally coming hot and furious. "I've got you." I didn't wait for another word. I ripped off my own jacket and wrapped it around her frail shoulders. I slid my arms under her knees and back. She weighed nothing, a bundle of brittle bones, lighter than my granddaughter. I lifted her as if she were made of glass. She let out a small sigh, and her head lolled against my chest, her body completely limp. She had used the last of her strength. I carried her up the stairs, my own knees screaming in protest, but I didn't feel it. All I felt was the burning, white-hot fury. I carried her through the kitchen and into the living room, kicking open the door to the downstairs bathroom. I didn't stop. I couldn't. I placed her gently on the living room sofa, the nicest piece of furniture we owned. She looked so small, so broken, swallowed up by the clean cushions. She was still trembling. "Stay here. I'm getting water. Don't move." I ran to the kitchen. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely fill a glass. I grabbed a straw. I ran back to her. "Diane, drink," I commanded, my voice softer now. I put the straw to her cracked lips. She drank. She drank with a desperation that shattered my heart all over again. She coughed and sputtered, but she didn't stop gulping down the water like it was life itself, which it was. I refilled the glass 3 times before she finally turned her head away, exhausted. I ran to the bathroom and soaked a washcloth in warm water. I returned and began to gently wipe the grime from her face, from her hands, from her matted hair. Her eyes never left my face. They were still wide, still full of a terrible, haunted knowledge. "I'm going to call a doctor," I said, reaching for my phone. "No," she rasped. Her hand shot out and grabbed my wrist with surprising grip. No police, no doctors. Not yet. "Diane, you're hurt. You're starving. You need—" "He'll know," she whispered, her eyes darting toward the front door. "He'll find out. They'll come back." My blood ran cold again. "Who, Diane?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Who did this to you?" I had to know. I had to have a name for my rage. I expected a stranger, a burglar, a monster who had broken in. Diane's eyes filled with fresh tears, but these weren't tears of fear. They were tears of a betrayal so deep I couldn't comprehend it. She struggled to speak, her throat raw. She leaned forward, as if afraid the walls were listening. "Jenny," she choked out. The name hit me like a physical blow. I recoiled. "What? No, Diane, you're confused." Jenny wouldn't. "Jenny," she insisted, her grip on my wrist tightening. "She came over the day after you left. She said she had a surprise for me in the basement." I couldn't breathe. My daughter. My only child. She locked me in. "Harry," Diane sobbed, the words tearing out of her. I begged her. I screamed. She just stood on the other side of the door. She said she was sorry. She said Kyle told her it was the only way, that they needed this. She collapsed back against the cushions, the confession taking everything she had left. "Jenny?" I said, the name tasting like ash in my mouth. "And Kyle." I looked around my quiet living room. The family photos on the mantel seemed to mock me. Jenny, smiling at her college graduation. Jenny laughing on her wedding day, holding Kyle's hand. My daughter. My little girl. She had padlocked my wife in the basement and left her to die. I stood up. The grief for my mother was gone. The exhaustion from my trip was gone. All that was left was a cold, hard clarity. I was not going to call the police. Diane was right. This was not a job for them. This was a job for me. My first instinct was primal. My thumb went straight to my phone, hovering over 911. I wanted sirens. I wanted police officers kicking down their door. I wanted to see Jenny and that worthless husband of hers, Kyle, dragged out of their comfortable bed in handcuffs. I wanted to scream, Look what my daughter did. Look at the monster I raised." Diane was still weeping into the cushion, a broken, hiccuping sound. I looked at her frail and shattered, then back at my phone, and I stopped. My thumb moved away from the screen. Why? Because Diane's words echoed in my head. Kyle said she needed to. This was not a moment of madness. This was not a sudden psychotic break. This was a plan. And if they had a plan to lock her in, they damn sure had a plan for what to do if they got caught. I could see it all playing out in my mind. The police would arrive, young officers, maybe an older, tired detective. They would see me, a 71-year-old man, freshly returned from his mother's deathbed, exhausted and grieving. They would see Diane, confused, malnourished, disoriented, perhaps even hysterical. And then, Jenny and Kyle would arrive, summoned by the sirens, their faces a perfect mask of tearful concern. I could hear Jenny's voice already, dripping with false panic. "Oh, thank God you're here, officer. We've been so worried. Dad just got back. He's exhausted. And Mom? Oh, Mom." She would bury her face in her hands, the perfect grieving daughter. Kyle, that snake, would put his arm around her, the picture of a strong, supportive husband. "She's been sundowning, officer," Kyle would say, his voice heavy with fake gravity. "It's getting worse. She wanders. She gets confused. She sometimes locks herself in places. We've been telling Harry for months he needs to get her evaluated. He's been in denial." They would look at Diane, huddled on the sofa, looking like a feral creature, and they would believe them. What proof did I have? A broken padlock. I broke it. The word of a traumatized, half-starved woman against two loving, concerned children. They might even say I did it, that I came home, found her confused, and fabricated this story. It would be their word against mine. And they were young, successful, and convincing. I was old, grieving, and furious. The police would file a report. They would call Adult Protective Services. It would become a bureaucratic nightmare. Diane would be evaluated by a state-appointed doctor, which is exactly what they wanted. They would use my own call for help as proof of her instability. No. I slid the phone back into my pocket. The white-hot rage didn't disappear. It just changed shape. It cooled. It hardened. It sharpened into a razor's edge. This was not a police matter. Not yet. This was a war. And you don't call the authorities when you're in the middle of a war zone and you don't even know the enemy's strength. First, I had to get Diane safe. She couldn't stay here. They might come back tonight. They had a key. They would see the broken lock. They would see me. They would know the game was up. And I had no idea what they were capable of. But I couldn't take her to a public hospital. An emergency room meant records, administrators, questions I was not prepared to answer. It meant Jenny and Kyle would be notified as next of kin. They would find her in hours. I needed privacy. I needed discretion. I needed loyalty. And loyalty, I had learned a long time ago, can be bought and paid for. I walked into my small office, bypassing the pile of mail. I opened the bottom drawer of my old metal desk, a drawer that looked stuck but wasn't. I pressed a false panel on the bottom. It popped open, revealing a small compartment. Inside was not cash. It was a satellite phone. I held down the number 1. It rang twice, a strange digital sound. Yes, Mr. Cole. The voice was crisp, professional, and wide awake, even though it was nearly 9 at night. This was Dr. Alistair Finch. Finch was not my family doctor. He wasn't on any insurance plan. He was my private physician, paid a significant retainer fee every year through a holding company I owned. He was paid for this exact moment. Absolute, unquestioning discretion. He handled my real checkups, the ones I took in Zurich, not the simple blood pressure readings my local GP performed. My children thought I was just a retired engineer with a modest pension. They had no idea. "Alistair," I said, my voice low and steady. "I have an emergency, a medical situation at my primary residence. The patient is my wife, Diane. What is the nature of the emergency?" No shock, no surprise, just business. Severe dehydration, acute malnutrition, and extreme psychological trauma. She's been held captive in my home. There was a half-second pause. "Do I need to notify the authorities, or is this a private matter, Harrison?" "It is a private matter, Alistair. For now, it is only us." "Understood. I'm dispatching a private ambulance, no markings. My best team. They will be at your location in 20 minutes. Where are we taking her?" "I need your best facility. The most secure, the most private. I want her under an assumed name. No visitors, no calls, no records available to anyone. Not her family. Especially not her family." "I have a clinic in Buckhead," he said immediately. "High-end recovery center. We'll check her in as Jane Doe, undergoing private post-operative care. I will handle her case personally. No one gets in or out without your direct authorization." "Good," I said. "Send the team now." I hung up. I walked back into the living room. Diane had fallen into an exhausted, shallow sleep on the sofa, her breathing still ragged. I knelt beside her and gently brushed the matted hair from her face. "It's okay, baby," I whispered, my voice thick. "I've got you." They thought I was just an old, tired man. They thought she was just a frail old woman. They thought they could sweep us aside, lock us away, and erase us. They forgot who I am. They were about to get a reminder. Alistair said 20 minutes. I had 10. I walked back to the living room. Diane was breathing shallowly on the sofa, her eyes closed, lost in the merciful grip of exhaustion. I pulled an Afghan over her, my hands shaking with a rage so cold it felt like ice in my veins. They had a plan. Kyle said she needed to. A plan that involved locking her in the dark to die. Why? The answer is always the same. It is always money. I left her side and walked down the hall to my office. It was the picture of a retired middle-class engineer. An old oak desk, a comfortable worn-out leather chair, shelves filled with 40-year-old textbooks on structural engineering. On the wall was a simple framed painting of a covered bridge. Jenny had painted that in high school. I stared at it. The girl who painted that was not the monster who had locked Diane in the basement. Or maybe she was. Maybe I had just refused to see it. I took the painting off the wall. Behind it was a small digital sentry safe, the kind you buy at an office supply store for $200. It was not a real safe. It was a symbol. I had given Jenny the combination years ago. "For emergencies," I told her. "If something ever happens to me and Diane, the combination is your birthday." I typed in her birthday, 0819. The light turned green, and the door clicked open. I pulled it open. It was empty. I kept $10,000 in cash in that safe always, for a real emergency. A tree falling on the house, a sudden medical bill, the kind of things normal people worry about. It was gone. Every last bill. She had known exactly where to look. My breathing hitched, but I forced myself to stay calm. This was just the start. The cash was easy. The real question was the bank. I sat down at my old desktop computer. The machine whirred to life slowly, agonizingly. I opened the browser and typed in the address for our local Atlanta bank, the joint account I shared with Diane, the account my pension was paid into, the account Jenny knew about, the one she sometimes helped me manage online when she visited, clicking the mouse with exaggerated patience, as if explaining technology to a child. "See, Dad, it's easy," she would say. I typed in the password, Jenny1984. I had set it as a joke on her 30th birthday. It never occurred to me to change it. Why would I? She was my daughter. The page loaded. Checking account balance, $142.31. I clicked on the tab for the savings account, the one we had spent 40 years building. The one I'd always called our rainy day fund. The money I told Jenny was everything we had. Our life savings. Balance, $0. 0, 0. My vision tunneled. I gripped the sides of the desk. I wasn't breathing. I clicked my hand, moving like a separate entity on the transaction history. It was a massacre. The day after I left for Vancouver, online transfer, $5,000. 2 days later, counter withdrawal, $10,000. 3 days after that, counter withdrawal, $15,000. A week ago, check cashed, $50,000. Total, $80,000 gone. I clicked on the scanned image of the $50,000 check. The bank had paid it out. It was made out to Kyle Lawson, and the signature, it was a pathetic, childish scrawl of my name, Harrison Cole. It looked like a third grader had traced it through waxed paper. It was a forgery so bad it was insulting. They didn't even try to make it look real. Why would they? They thought Diane was locked in the basement, dead or dying. They thought I was across the continent grieving. They thought by the time I got back, the money would be gone, the house would be sold, and they would be ghosts. I leaned back in the creaking office chair. I put my head in my hands, but I wasn't crying. I wasn't screaming. I was processing a single, terrible, pathetic fact. The safe, $10,000. The bank account, $80,000, $90,000. They had locked a human being in a concrete box. They had left my wife to starve, to die of thirst, to rot in her own filth, for $90,000. A cold, bitter laugh escaped my lips. It was a dry, ugly sound in the quiet room. $90,000. My daughter Jenny, the girl I had sent to Spelman, the girl whose European vacations I had funded, whose $500,000 wedding I had paid for, she thought that was the sum total of my life. She thought she was committing the perfect crime for a retiree's modest nest egg. What she didn't know, what she had never bothered to ask, what my simple, modest life in this small brick house had hidden from her greedy, stupid eyes was that $90,000 was less than the tax I paid on my Swiss investments last quarter. It was less than the dividend payment I receive every month from the holding company that bears my name. It was, to me, nothing. Pocket change. They tried to murder my wife for pocket change. The sheer idiotic cheapness of their evil was what finally broke me. The pettiness of their betrayal. They were not masterminds. They were just small, pathetic. I thought of Kyle with his leased BMW and his fake Rolex, and Jenny with her desperation to look wealthy. They were children playing a deadly game for monopoly money, and they didn't even realize the real bank was sitting right in front of them, the man they called Dad. My rage was now pure. It was clean. It was focused. They had mistaken my quiet life for weakness. They had mistaken my generosity for foolishness. They had mistaken my love for stupidity. They were about to learn the difference between a retired engineer and a sleeping giant. I closed the browser. I erased the history. I stood up and walked back to the living room just as I heard the faint, discreet sound of a vehicle pulling into my driveway. Alistair's team was here. I looked down at Diane, still sleeping. "It's okay, baby," I whispered. "The doctors are here. You're safe now." I went to the door. The investigation was over. The war had just begun. Exactly 20 minutes later, a long black transport van with heavily tinted windows pulled silently into my driveway. It had no sirens, no lights, no hospital logos. It looked like a vehicle for diplomatic transport. 2 men in simple dark blue scrubs emerged from the side door carrying a collapsible gurney. They moved with quiet, practiced efficiency that spoke of high-cost private care. Dr. Alistair Finch followed them, carrying a black leather medical bag. Alistair is a tall, thin man with a perpetually serious expression. He looks more like a high-powered attorney than a physician, which is precisely why I hired him. He walked past me into the house. His eyes immediately landed on Diane. He didn't waste a second on greetings. He knelt by the sofa. The 2 medics stood silently by the door, awaiting his orders. "Diane," he said, his voice surprisingly gentle. "My name is Dr. Finch. I'm a friend of Harry's. I'm going to take care of you." He snapped on latex gloves and began his assessment. He was quick, his hands sure and professional. He took her blood pressure dangerously low. He shone a light into her eyes, slow to react. He gently pinched the skin on the back of her hand. It stayed tented, a sign of extreme dehydration. I stood by the fireplace, arms crossed so tight my muscles ached. I felt a profound, terrible helplessness. I could command empires of money from my office, but I couldn't undo the last 14 days of suffering my wife had endured. Alistair looked up at me, his face grim. She's in bad shape, Harrison. Acute kidney stress from the dehydration, severe malnutrition. Hypothermia has set in the concrete floor was leaching her body heat. Her electrolytes are completely out of balance. He listened to her heart with his stethoscope, and her pulse is thready. She is in the advanced stages of starvation. He paused, then added in a lower voice. Whoever did this wasn't just trying to scare her. They were timing it. They knew exactly how long a human body can last under these conditions. Another 24, maybe 48 hours, and I would have been saving you the expense of a private ambulance. The clinical coldness of his observation confirmed what I already knew. This was not a warning. It was attempted murder. Can you move her? I asked, my voice a low growl. Yes. She needs immediate intravenous fluids and monitoring. My team is ready. He nodded to the medics. Let's get her stabilized for transport. The two men moved forward. They were gentle but fast. They slid a board under her, hooked up a portable IV line they'd brought in, and wrapped her in thermal blankets. Diane whimpered as they moved her, a small, frightened sound that tore at my insides. It's okay, baby, I said, moving to her side, touching her matted hair. You're safe now. These men are taking you to a good place, a private place. I'll be right behind you. Her eyes fluttered open and tried to focus on me. Jenny, she whispered, her voice cracking. Shh, I said. Don't talk. Don't think about her. Don't think about anything. Just rest. I will handle it. She relaxed just slightly and let her eyes close. She trusted me. The weight of that trust settled on my shoulders like a block of granite. Where to, Mr. Cole? Alistair asked, though he already knew the protocol. The Buckhead facility, I said. The executive wing. Her name is Jane Smith. No visitors, no calls. No one, not even hospital administration, knows her real name. Only you and me. Understood, Alistair said. He turned to his team. You have the orders. Move her out. The medics efficiently wheeled her out the front door and loaded her into the back of the black van. The doors closed with a quiet, solid thunk. I was about to follow when Alistair put a hand on my arm. Harrison, one last thing. I turned. He was holding something in his gloved hand, a small, crumpled piece of paper. My senior medic found this when he was checking her vitals, Alistair said. It was clutched in her right hand. She wouldn't let it go, even in her delirious state. He had to gently pry it from her fingers so he could attach the pulse oximeter. He thought it might be important. I looked at the wadded-up paper. It was stained and damp. I took it from him. My hands were shaking, not from age, but from rage. Thank you, Alistair, I said. Send me the bill and keep me updated every hour. Of course. And Harrison, be careful. The people who would do this to her are not rational. Oh, they're perfectly rational, I said, my voice cold. They just made a very bad calculation. He nodded, got into the front seat of the van, and the van pulled away, disappearing silently into the night. I was alone again in the dark, silent house. The smell of the basement still hung in the air. I closed the front door, locked the deadbolt, and walked into the kitchen, my eyes fixed on the crumpled piece of paper in my hand. I smoothed it out on the kitchen counter. My blood stopped moving. It wasn't a letter. It wasn't a note. It was a real estate listing, a glossy printout from a local agency. I saw a picture of my own front porch, my own flower beds, my own oak tree. It was a listing for my house. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, large lot, sold as is. And then I saw the 3 words at the bottom, printed in bold red letters that seemed to scream at me from the page. Pending sale. They weren't just after the $90,000. That was just the appetizer. This, the house, the place I had lived in for 40 years. The only real asset they thought I had was the main course. They had locked my wife in the basement to let her die so that she couldn't stop them from selling her home right out from under her. I stood there in the silent kitchen for a long time, the crumpled real estate listing clutched in my fist. Pending sale. The words seemed to mock me. They weren't just thieves. They were liquidators. They were erasing us. My mind was a chaotic storm of images. Diane's skeletal face, the empty safe, the drained bank accounts, and now this final, insulting proof of their plan. They weren't just stealing our nest egg. They were stealing our home, our memories, the foundation of our lives. The kettle on the stove began to whistle. I didn't even remember filling it. I mechanically poured the boiling water over a tea bag, my hands moving on autopilot. I needed to think. I needed to be calm. The man who had sat by his mother's bedside for 2 weeks was gone, replaced by someone else, a man I hadn't been in a very long time, a man who built things, and who understood exactly how to tear them down. I sat at the kitchen table, the one Diane and I had eaten at for a quarter of a century. I let the silence settle. I let the cold fury sharpen my mind into a single, focused point. They thought I was a grieving, tired, simple old man. Good. That's exactly who I would be. As if summoned, my phone buzzed on the counter. I looked at the screen. The name glowed. Jenny. I let it ring once, twice, a third time, letting the vibration rattle against the granite. I needed to shift my breathing, to let the exhaustion I had felt on the plane settle back over me, to bury the ice in my veins under a blanket of grief. I took a slow, shaky breath and picked up the phone. Dad. Her voice was a perfect symphony of manufactured concern, bright, high-pitched, trembling on the edge of tears. Oh, Dad, thank God. I've been calling and calling. Your phone just kept going to voicemail. How was the flight? Are you okay? How is Grandma? I let a long sigh be my answer. She's gone, honey. I made my voice thick, cracked. She passed away 2 days ago. I'm just tired, Jenny. So tired. Oh, Daddy, no. Her sobs sounded practiced, like something she'd heard in a movie. I'm so sorry. You sound awful. Are you home? Are you safe? I'm home, I said, rubbing my temples. Just walked in. The house is... It's dark, honey. The power seems to be off in the living room. And where's Diane? I thought she'd be here to pick me up. Her car's in the garage. I had cast the bait. Now I waited for the lie. There was a pause, just a fraction of a second, the sound of a quick intake of breath, the sound of her mind scrambling for the script. Oh my God, that's right, she exclaimed, her voice suddenly too loud, too cheerful. With everything going on with Grandma, I completely forgot to text you. Forgot what, Jenny? Dad, it was crazy. Right after you left for Vancouver, Diane got a call her sister Mary. You know, the one in Florida. She had a terrible fall, broke her hip. It was really bad. Diane had to fly out immediately to take care of her. I stared at the blank kitchen wall. Diane has no sister. Her only sibling was a brother in Chicago, a man we had just had dinner with last month. Mary. She couldn't even be bothered to create a convincing lie. It was sloppy. It was arrogant. It was insulting. Florida, I said, playing the part of the confused, grieving husband. Coordination. Mary. Right. I guess I forgot about Mary. Exactly. Jenny jumped on my confusion. It was all so sudden, Dad. She felt terrible leaving. But you know Diane, she's just got a heart of gold. She said to tell you she loves you, that she's so sorry about Grandma, and that she'll be back as soon as Mary is stable. She said she'd call you tonight. A perfect, neat little package. Diane was gone, but not in a way that would raise alarms. Just unavailable. Out of state. Okay, honey, I said, letting my voice trail off. I guess I'm just on my own then. I'll come over tomorrow, Dad. I promise. I'll bring you some food, she said, her voice dripping with pity. But oh, listen, Dad. I know this is the worst possible time, the absolute worst, with Grandma passing and you being so tired. Here it comes. The second act. What is it, Jenny? I'm not really in the mood for any. I know. It's just, Kyle and I, we're in a bit of a bind. A really big one. A bind? What kind of bind? I said, injecting a note of fatherly irritation. It's this investment, Dad. A property, a foreclosure. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. We can flip it. And honestly, Dad, it would set us up for life. It would mean we could finally take care of you and Diane, you know, the way you deserve. The irony was so thick I could barely breathe. She was talking about flipping my own house. Jenny, I'm too tired for this. I don't know anything about flipping properties. I know, Dad, she said, her voice becoming urgent, desperate. You don't have to. It's all set up. But our partner, the money fell through at the last second. The bank needs the down payment by tomorrow afternoon, or we lose everything. We lose the deposit. Everything. I stayed silent. I let the silence stretch, filling it with my imaginary exhaustion. We need a loan, Dad, she finally whispered, as if she were ashamed. A very short-term loan, just until the bank paperwork clears. We'll pay you back in a month with interest. I swear on my life. I let out another long sigh. How much, Jenny? Another pause. She was bracing herself. It's $80,000. The exact amount to the penny. The $80,000 she had already stolen. My mind was crystal clear. This was the test. She wasn't just asking for a loan. She was checking to see if I had looked at the accounts. If I said, I don't have it, or that's my life savings, it's gone, they would know I was onto them. Their plan would change. They would run, or worse. But if I said yes, if I acted like the grieving, clueless old man who still had his life savings, they would think I was still the fool. They would think they were still in control. I had to play the part. 80,000. I stammered, my voice full of shock. Lord, Jenny, that's everything. That's the whole savings account. That's mine and Diane's entire future. I know, she cried, and I could hear the predatory eagerness in her voice now. She was reeling me in. I know, Dad, but it's a sure thing. I promise we'll pay it back double even. This will fix everything for us. Please, Dad, please. I was silent for a full 10 seconds. I let her hang there. All right, I whispered, as if the word was pulled from me against my will. All right, honey. You're my only daughter. If it's this important, okay. Oh my God, Dad. Thank you, but I can't do it online, I said, adding my own little thread to the web. I don't remember the passwords. Not since, you know. I'll have to go to the bank tomorrow. You'll have to come with me. You'll have to help me talk to the teller. Tell them I need to withdraw it all. Of course, Dad. Yes, whatever you need. I'll pick you up at 10. 10 a.m. We'll go together. Okay, honey, I said, my voice trailing off. I need to sleep now. I'm just so tired. I love you, Dad. You won't regret this. I'm sure I won't, Jenny, I said, and hung up the phone. I sat in the dark kitchen. The call was over. She had lied about Diane. She had feigned sympathy for my mother. And then, with breathtaking cruelty, she had tried to get me to go to the bank, to willingly withdraw the money they had already stolen. She was trying to make me her accomplice in covering her own crime. My hand closed into a fist on the table. She wanted to meet me at the bank at 10 a.m. Good. That gave me 12 hours to prepare the reception. I didn't sleep. Sleep was a luxury I could not afford. I sat at my kitchen table, the house silent and cold, the crumpled real estate listing sitting under the single kitchen light. Pending sale. The words seemed to pulse in the quiet. My daughter was selling my home while her accomplice left my wife to die on the concrete floor below me. At 5 a.m., I washed my face, the water cold against my skin. I did not change out of the wrinkled clothes I had traveled in. I was still Harrison Cole, the grieving widower, the tired old man. I walked out of my front door, ignoring the garage. I walked the 3 blocks to the MARTA station in the pre-dawn chill. The city was still gray and quiet. I blended in with the first wave of early morning workers, just another old black man, invisible to the world. That was how I had designed it. I got off at Peachtree Center Station. I walked past the office workers, grabbing coffee, none of them giving me a second glance. I entered the lobby of the 101 Marietta building, a tall, imposing tower of black glass and steel. I did not go to the main elevators, where the crowds were already forming. I walked to a private bank of elevators at the rear, marked Penthouse Access Key Card Only. I pressed my thumb against the biometric scanner. It glowed green. The brushed steel doors slid open silently. I stepped in. There was only one button, PH. The elevator ascended without a sound, a smooth, swift climb that separated me from the world below. This was my real life. The life Jenny, in her greedy, pathetic scrambling for $90,000, had never even bothered to look for. She and Kyle saw the old brick rancher in East Atlanta and thought they saw the whole picture. They saw the flannel shirts and the 10-year-old sedan and thought they understood my worth. They never asked why I retired at 55. They never asked what I did with the patents from my structural engineering firm. They just saw the simple life I showed them and assumed it was the only one I had. The elevator doors opened into the silent, expansive lobby of Cole Holdings Incorporated. It was 6:30 a.m. The walls were Italian marble, not the peeling paint of my kitchen. The air smelled faintly of clean leather and old wood, not the stench of the basement. Here, I was not Harrison Harry Cole, the retired engineer. Here, I was Mr. Cole, the founder, the silent chairman, the man who had sold his engineering firm for a sum that still staggered me, and who had spent the next 30 years quietly, methodically turning that fortune into a private global investment empire. My daughter thought I was worth a house and $90,000. The truth was, I owned the bank that held her mortgage. He was already there. Elias Thorne. Thorne was not just my lawyer. He was the CEO of my family office, the man who had managed my wealth for 3 decades. He was the only man on earth, besides Alistair, who knew the full truth. He was waiting in my personal office, standing before the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city as it woke up. He was a sharp, impeccably dressed man who had never lost a fight. He turned as I entered. He didn't offer condolences for my mother. We were long past pleasantries. "Harrison," he said, his voice grave. "Alistair's report came in an hour ago. Diane is stable, but the medical findings are disturbing. Malnutrition, acute kidney stress. This was not a short-term event." "They're not as disturbing as this," I said. My voice was different in this room, colder, clearer. I threw the crumpled real estate listing onto his massive mahogany desk. "And this..." I pulled out my phone and showed him the screenshot of my drained local bank account. Thorne looked at the $80,000 figure, then at the real estate listing. He didn't look shocked. He looked insulted. $90,000, I said, my voice dangerously quiet. "She locked my wife in a cellar for $90,000. Thorne turned to his terminal. His fingers flew across the keyboard. He was not a neighborhood lawyer. He was a shark. And this was his ocean. "This is ambitious," he said, his voice dripping with contempt. "And sloppy. I'm accessing the county registrar now." I sat in the black leather chair opposite him, the same chair where I had signed deals worth tens of millions. Now I was here to discuss the petty theft of $80,000. The absurdity of it was suffocating. "Here it is," Thorne said, turning the large monitor to face me. "A quitclaim deed filed 3 days after I left for Vancouver. Signed by me and Diane Cole. Notarized forgery," I stated. "Of course," Thorne agreed. "Shockingly bad, but good enough to fool a busy county clerk. They used this fraudulent deed to take legal ownership. Then they immediately listed the property with a discount agent. They wanted a quick cash sale. Who is the buyer?" Thorne typed again. "The buyer is a shell corporation registered 2 months ago to a P.O. Box. Lawson Developments, LLC. "Kyle," I hissed. "He's buying your house from himself," Thorne confirmed. "He used the fraudulent deed as collateral to get a hard money loan. He was planning to use the stolen $90,000 as his down payment to secure the loan, then flip the house for its full market value of $750,000. It's desperate. It's stupid, but it's fast. When does it close?" "That's the problem," Thorne said, his eyes hard. "It's scheduled to close tomorrow. By the time I was supposed to get back from Vancouver, the house would have been legally his, and Diane, well, they needed her gone. They locked her in the basement so she couldn't answer the phone when the title company or the notary called to confirm the sale. The plan was complete. Steal the cash, steal the house, and if Diane died in the process, that was just a bonus. It tidied up the loose ends. I stood up and walked to the window. The sun was rising over Atlanta, a beautiful, bloody orange. I felt nothing but a cold, refined rage. "Stop it," I ordered. "Kill the sale. Call the banks, the county. Freeze everything." Thorne nodded, his hand already on his phone. "That's the easy part. I'll have a lien on the property and a full investigation launched within the hour. This sale is dead." I watched the city streets below, beginning to fill with cars. I thought of Jenny, my little girl, waking up, getting dressed, believing she was just hours away from winning. Believing she was about to help her confused old dad at the bank. "Wait," I said, turning back to him. Thorne paused, his hand over the phone. "Harrison, don't stop the sale." Thorne frowned. "What do you mean, no? If you let it close, they'll own the title. It will be a legal nightmare to claw it back, even with the fraud." "I don't care about the house," I said. "It's just brick and wood. It's tainted. Let them have it." Thorne looked at me. A slow, razor-sharp smile spread across his face. He understood. "You're not trying to save the house, are you?" "No," I said. "I'm setting a trap. They think they stole $80,000. They think they're about to steal a $700,000 house. They are arrogant. They are stupid. And they are overconfident. Jenny is picking me up at 10 a.m. to go to the bank. She thinks she's going to play me. I walked back to the desk. I don't want you to stop this, Elias. I want you to fund it. I want you to make sure that loan goes through without a hitch. I want you to make sure that Shell Company gets the title. I want them to think they've won. I want them to hold the prize in their greedy, filthy hands. And then, Thorne asked, leaning back in his chair, now fully engaged. And then, I said, feeling the ice settle permanently in my heart, I'm going to take everything else. And I mean everything. Thorne nodded, a grim satisfaction in his eyes. He understood the strategy. They want to play in the deep end, he said, tapping the real estate listing. Let's show them what the sharks look like. While you're at the bank, I'll be in a different part of the ocean. You wanted to know why they were so desperate. I'll find out. He reached for his phone. I have a private investigator on permanent retainer. He's expensive. He's intrusive. And he's worth every damn penny. I'm authorizing his executive inquiry package on Kyle Lawson. I want to know what he ate for breakfast and who paid for it. Go home, Harrison. Play your part. By the time you call me this afternoon, I will have answers. I left the penthouse. The ride down the silent elevator felt like a descent back into a lie. I exited the gleaming lobby invisible again, and just another old man walking to the MARTA station. When I got back to my neighborhood, the sun was up. The world looked normal. A neighbor waved. I waved back. I entered my house. The smell of the basement was still there, faint and sour. I closed the broken basement door, went into my office, and sat at my desk, staring at the empty safe. I had 3 hours until Jenny arrived. I thought about the man my daughter had married, Kyle Lawson. He was a white man from a good family, or so he said. He worked in investment banking. He was handsome, smooth, always had the right compliment. He wore expensive suits and drove a car I knew he couldn't afford on his salary. I had never liked him. I felt a coldness from him, an ambition that was hollow. But Jenny adored him. She was dazzled by him. And I, blinded by my love for my daughter, had paid for the wedding a lavish, gaudy affair that cost more than my first home. I had given them the down payment for their house in a gated community. I had done it all, hoping to buy her happiness. I had been a fool. I looked at the clock. 9 a.m. Thorne was a fast worker. My personal cell phone, the one nobody knew about, buzzed on the desk. A secure message from Thorne. I opened it. There was a single attachment, a PDF file. I clicked. The report was 14 pages long. I started to read. By the time I finished, the mug of coffee in my hand was ice cold, and the man I was had been replaced by a stranger. Kyle Lawson was not an investment banker. According to Thorne's investigator, Kyle Lawson had been fired from his junior analyst position 2 years ago, fired for embezzlement. He had been stealing from his clients' accounts. The firm had been desperate to avoid a scandal, so they buried it, forcing him to sign an NDA and letting him go quietly. For 2 years, he had been unemployed. The expensive suits, the leased BMW, the constant talk of big deals and client meetings, it was all a performance, a charade. Where did the money come from? I scrolled down. He had been living off Jenny, living off the credit cards. I had given her the cards I paid off every month without looking at the statements, believing I was funding her side business, her shopping, her lunches with friends. I was a fool. I had been financing the very snake who was now trying to steal my home. I read on. It got worse. He wasn't just broke. He was hunted. Kyle Lawson was a compulsive gambler. The investigator had found online accounts, wire transfers to offshore bookmakers, withdrawals from payday loan sharks. The investment he had mentioned to Jenny, the one that fell through, wasn't a property. It was a sports bet, a college football game. He had bet everything he had and everything he didn't, and he had lost. The report listed his current outstanding debts. The number made me go cold. $214,000. This was not debt to a bank with a polite collections department. This was debt to men who break legs, men who don't care about an NDA. The investigator had found text messages. They had given Kyle a deadline. The deadline was tomorrow. Now I understood the desperation, the sloppiness of the forgery, the unbelievable cruelty of locking Diane in the basement. It wasn't just greed. It was raw, animal panic. He needed my $90,000 in the house sale to clear his debts to save his own skin. I closed the file, my heart hammering with a sick understanding. This was the motive. a desperate, cornered rat willing to do anything to escape the trap. But Thorne's investigator was thorough. There was one last document. I opened it. It was a digital copy of an insurance application. I stared at it, not understanding at first. It was a life insurance policy, a new one, taken out just 6 weeks ago, right after I had told the family I would be going to Vancouver to care for my mother. It was not a policy on his own life. It was not on Jenny's. It was a term life policy for $500,000 on Diane Cole, my wife. The beneficiary was listed as his company, the shell company Lawson Developments LLC. I put the phone down on the desk. I looked at the broken basement door, now wedged shut. The $90,000 wasn't the plan. The house wasn't the plan. Those were just bonuses. The plan was this. The plan was the $500,000 insurance payout. They hadn't locked Diane in the basement to stop her from interfering with the sale. They had locked her in the basement to die. A tragic, terrible accident. The confused old wife of a grieving husband who was out of the country had somehow tragically locked herself in the basement. She had passed away from dehydration, a horrible, sad, accidental death. Who would question it? I would be grieving my mother. Jenny would be the grieving daughter-in-law. Kyle would be the supportive husband. They would have the house, the cash, and a $500,000 check. I stood up. I walked to the window. I looked at my quiet suburban street. My daughter, my son-in-law, they weren't just thieves. They were murderers, and they were about to walk right through my front door in less than 1 hour. I didn't have to wait long. I was still sitting at the kitchen table, the silence of the house pressing in on me. I stared at the crumpled real estate listing, pending sale. I had smoothed it out, and the paper was still damp in places. I didn't know if it was from the moisture in the basement or the sweat from Diane's hand as she clutched it. I thought about the timeline. They had 14 days. 14 days while I was gone, holding my mother's hand. 14 days for Diane to slowly waste away. 14 days for the house sale to close. They had timed it perfectly. They must have been tracking the sale's progress every single day, waiting for the money to clear. But Thorne's investigator was better. My satellite phone, the one hidden in my desk drawer, vibrated once. A secure text from Thorne. It was 9:48 a.m. The message was simple. Phase 1 complete. The title company has been served with a fraud injunction. The hard money lender has been notified that the collateral is based on a forged deed. The sale is dead in the water. Brace for impact. I put the secret phone away. I placed my old standard flip phone on the kitchen table in front of me. I looked at the broken, wedged, shut basement door. I waited. The impact came at 9:52 a.m. My phone rang screeching in the quiet house. I looked at the caller ID. Not Jenny. It was Kyle. This was good. Jenny would be emotional, manipulative. She would try to cry her way out of it. Kyle was just a bully. And bullies, when cornered, don't cry. They threaten. I let it ring 3 times, just long enough for his panic to build. Then I took a long, shaky breath, channeling the exhausted, grieving 71-year-old man they thought I was. I answered. Hello. My voice was thick, groggy. Harrison, what the hell is going on? His voice was a sharp bark. No Dad, no Harry. Not even a hello, just pure, undiluted panic. Kyle, I said, my voice trembling with confusion. Kyle, what's wrong? What time is it? I'm waiting for Jenny. She's supposed to pick me up. We're going to the bank. Forget the bank, he shouted so loud I had to pull the phone from my ear. The bank doesn't matter. The house, Harrison. The house! The house, I said, letting a note of fear enter my voice. What? What about the house? Did a pipe burst? The power is out in the living room. Don't play dumb with me, old man, he roared. The title company, they just called me. They said the sale is frozen. They said you filed a fraud complaint. You ruined it. You just cost us everything. I let a long, painful silence stretch. I let him hear me breathing, sharp and erratic, like an old man on the verge of a heart attack. Sale? I finally whispered. What sale? Kyle, you're not making any sense. I just got home. My mother just died. I'm very tired. I don't know what you're talking about. A fraud complaint. I haven't talked to anyone but Jenny. I could hear him breathing heavily on the other end. He had said too much. He had revealed his hand. The investment, Harrison, he said, trying to dial back his rage, his voice now slick and false. The property Jenny told you about, we were just We were using your house's equity as collateral to secure the funding. You must have gotten some automated alert, some mail. You must have done something. Collateral. I made my voice crack, filled with disbelief and terror. You used my house? Kyle, Diane and I own this house outright. You can't just use it. Is that legal? Oh Lord, is that why? Is that why the bank account is empty? Did you do that too? Did you steal our savings, Kyle? I had fed him the narrative. I had given him the lie he wanted to hear, that I was just a confused old man who had discovered the stolen 80,000 and accidentally messed up their real plan. He seized the bait immediately. Listen, Harrison, it's complicated, he said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial hush. The bank account was just to secure the loan. It's all connected. It's a simple misunderstanding, a stupid bank error. We can fix this. You just have to call the title company. Tell them it's all fine. Tell them you approve the sale. Approve the sale. I repeated, my voice rising in manufactured hysteria. Approve the sale of my house, Kyle. I feel sick. I don't understand any of this. This is too much. My mother. Diane is gone. She's in Florida, and now this. I know, he said, his voice dripping with false patience. We're sorry about your mother, but this is urgent, Harrison. This is life and death. You need to call them. You need to call them now. No, I said, my voice trembling. No, I'm not calling anyone. I don't understand. I don't know who to trust. You need to come here. Both of you, you and Jenny, you need to come to the house right now. What? We're busy trying to fix this. Now! I screamed, a genuine roar of rage that I disguised as the panic of a cornered old man. You come here right now and explain to my face what you did with my money and what you are doing with my house. If you don't, I'm calling the police. I think you stole from me. You stole my life savings. That was the magic word. Police. No. Kyle's voice was sharp. Don't do that. Don't call anyone. It's just a misunderstanding. I promise we're on our way. We'll be there in 15 minutes. Just stay there. Don't touch anything. We'll explain everything. He hung up abruptly. I placed the phone back on the table. The silence of the house returned, but it was different now. It was no longer the silence of absence. It was the silence of a web vibrating, waiting for the fly. I looked at the clock. 9:58 a.m. They would be here soon, an arrogant, desperate pair, completely unaware that they were walking straight into the lion's den. I was no longer the grieving son. I was no longer the confused husband. I was the bait. And the trap was set. The phone was heavy in my hand. 15 minutes. That's what he said. They would be here in 15 minutes, driving up to my house, their minds sharp and unified, ready to handle the confused old man. They would come prepared with false sympathy and practiced lies, ready to corner me in my own living room. I looked at the broken padlock on the floor. I looked at the dark stain on the sofa where Diane had been. Not here. I would not have this fight here. This house was a crime scene. It was a tomb. It was their territory. I needed sterile ground. I needed leverage. I needed my territory. I grabbed my simple old flip phone and sent a text to Jenny. My fingers had to fake a tremor, adding typos and correcting them, making myself look pathetic and flustered. Jenny, I can't be in the house. The power is still out in the living room, and it feels too empty. Too many memories. Diane is gone. Mom is gone. It's just too much. I'm scared. I let that sit for a moment. Then I sent another. I'm going to the bank. The big one. The main branch downtown, 101 Marietta. I need to talk to the manager anyway about the account. Please, honey, meet me there in an hour. 10:30. Please. I don't know what to do. I had made myself weak. I had made myself a victim. I had given her a task, a new problem to solve. They would love that. It would restore their sense of control. Her reply came back almost instantly. Okay, Dad, 10:30. Don't worry. Just sit in the lobby. Don't talk to anyone. We'll handle everything. We'll handle everything. The arrogance of it. I put the phone in my pocket. I walked out of my front door. I did not take Diane's car. I did not call a cab. I walked the 3 blocks to the MARTA station in the morning light, just another old black man in a rumpled shirt. Invisible. It was the best camouflage in the world. I got off at Peachtree Center, surrounded by the morning rush. I walked into the soaring, polished granite lobby of 101 Marietta Street. I ignored the main bank of elevators, the ones crowded with office workers. I walked to a private, unmarked elevator at the rear of the lobby, next to a discreet sign that read, Penthouse, Authorized Access Only. I pressed my thumb against the flat black biometric scanner. It beeped softly and glowed green. The stainless steel door slid open with a whisper. I stepped inside. The only button was a simple PH. The elevator climbed fast and silent, lifting me above the city. This was my real world. The life my daughter, in her pathetic scramble for $90,000, had never even thought to look for. The doors opened into the lobby of Cole Holdings Incorporated. The floors were black marble. The walls were glass. The air was still. It was 7:30 a.m., but he was already there. Elias Thorne. Thorne was not just my lawyer. He was the CEO of my private family office, the man who managed the fortune I had built from the patents I sold 30 years ago. He was the only man on earth who knew every single dollar. He was standing by the window, looking down on the city. He turned as I entered. He was, as always, immaculate in a dark suit. "Harrison," he said. His voice was grim. "Alistair's report came in an hour ago. Diane is stable, but the medical findings are disturbing. Malnutrition, acute kidney stress. This was not a mistake. This was an execution plan. They're on their way here," I said. My voice was different in this room, colder, harder. Thorne raised an eyebrow. "They think they're coming to the retail bank on the 10th floor to handle me. They think I'm a grieving, confused old man who accidentally discovered the stolen $80,000 and messed up their real plan." I walked over to the floor-to-ceiling window. The view was magnificent. I owned this view. "What they don't know," I said, "is that I have the report from your investigator. The one you sent me this morning." Thorne nodded. It was illuminating. It was definitive. I corrected him. I thought back to the email I had read at 5 a.m. Kyle Lawson fired for embezzlement 2 years ago. Not an investment banker, but a compulsive gambler. $214,000 in debt to men who don't send polite letters. And the final, sickening attachment, the life insurance policy, $500,000 on Diane. "They weren't just after the house, Elias," I said, my voice dangerously quiet. "The house was just a bonus. The $90,000 was just seed money. They were after the insurance payout. The insurance required a death certificate," Thorne said. "And a 14-day fast in a cold basement provides one," I replied. "A tragic accident. A confused old woman. A grieving husband out of the country. It's almost clean." "Almost," Thorne agreed. "Your daughter is about to have a very bad day." "I'm not dressed for a bad day," I said, looking down at my wrinkled clothes. Thorne permitted himself a thin smile. "I anticipated that." He gestured to a private door. "Your suite is ready. Your tailor delivered 3 options yesterday, as requested." I walked into the private apartment I kept adjoining the office. I stripped off the clothes of Harry, the tired old man. I showered. I shaved. I put on a custom-tailored dark charcoal suit, a crisp white shirt, a silk tie the color of old blood. I put on the shoes that cost more than the car in my garage. When I looked in the mirror, Harrison Cole was gone. Mr. Cole looked back. His eyes were cold. I walked back out. Thorne was at his desk. 2 men were standing by the elevator doors, large, wearing suits that didn't hide their profession. My private security. "It's 10:28 a.m., Thorne said. "They just cleared lobby security. They're agitated. They believe they are going to the 10th floor manager's office." "Good," I said. "Route them. Tell the front desk my investment meeting has been moved to the chairman's office." "As you wish." Thorne smiled. "I'll have them sent right up." I walked back to the window, my back to the door, and clasped my hands behind me. I listened to the silence. I heard the ding of the private elevator. I heard the steel doors slide open. I heard their footsteps on the marble floor. Then I heard them stop. Dead. The silence that followed was heavy. They were expecting cubicles, fluorescent lights, and a bank manager. They were standing in a space larger than my entire house, surrounded by original art, looking at a wall of glass that overlooked the entire state of Georgia. What the hell is this?" I heard Kyle mutter. "This isn't the bank." "Dad," Jenny's voice was small, confused. "Dad, are you here?" the receptionist said. I turned around slowly. The look on their faces, it was worth $1 million. Jenny's hand flew to her mouth. Her eyes went from my face to the suit I was wearing, to Elias Thorne standing impassively at his desk, to the 2 very large, very serious men standing guard by the elevator. Kyle's reaction was different. It wasn't confusion. It was raw, undiluted fear. He was a small-time con man who had just stumbled into a room he didn't belong in. He was a rat who had just realized the pantry he was raiding was owned by a lion. He instantly recognized the symbols of true power, and he knew, with a dawning, sickening certainty, that he was hopelessly, fatally out of his league. "Dad," Jenny said again, her voice a squeak. "What is this place? Who are these people? Why? Why are you dressed like that?" Kyle grabbed her arm, his knuckles white. "Jenny, shut up," he hissed. His eyes were darting around the room, calculating, panicking. "This," I said, my voice calm and low, resonating in the vast, quiet room, "is Cole Holdings. It is my office. Please sit down. We have so much to discuss." They did not sit. Jenny looked like she had seen a ghost, her hands clutching the strap of her handbag. Kyle, on the other hand, was trying to puff himself up, trying to look big, adjusting his suit jacket, trying to meet my gaze with a defiance that was clearly failing. His eyes were damp with sweat. "Dad," Jenny stammered. "What is this? Is this a joke? Who are these men? I don't understand. We're here to help you." "Help me," I repeated. The words were flat, dead in the air. "That's what you call it. Helping." Kyle stepped forward slightly, putting himself in front of Jenny, a pathetic attempt at protection. "Harrison, look, we don't know what kind of game you're playing. You call us in a panic. You sound confused. And now this circus. We're worried about you. We came here to take you to the bank like you asked." "The bank," I said. "Yes, we'll get to the bank. But first, let's talk about the reason we need to go to the bank. Let's talk about the house, Kyle." Jenny flinched. "The house, Dad." That's what Kyle was trying to explain. "It's just a misunderstanding. The bank must have made a mistake." "A mistake?" I interrupted, my voice cutting through her excuse. "Was it a mistake when you or Kyle screwed a new hasp onto my basement door? Was it a mistake when you put my padlock on it, locking my wife inside? Was it a mistake when you left her there for 14 days with 3 bottles of water?" Jenny made a sound, a choked little gasp, and took a step back. "Or was it a mistake," I continued, "when you forged my signature and Diane's on a quit-claim deed, a deed that transferred ownership of my home to a shell company you registered 6 weeks ago? A company called Lawson Developments LLC. Jenny's face went completely white. She spun around to her husband. "Kyle, what is Lawson Developments? What is he talking about?" She didn't even know. She was just a pawn. A stupid, willing, greedy pawn. Kyle's facade cracked. The sweat on his forehead was now beading. "You don't know what you're talking about, old man. That was an investment. A simple market play. It was legal." "Legal?" I almost smiled. "You call forgery legal? You call locking a 68-year-old woman in a cellar a market play? You were going to buy my house from me, using my own stolen $90,000 as the down payment, then flip it for $750,000. It's sloppy. It's desperate. And it's pathetic, Kyle." Jenny was pulling on his arm now, her voice rising to a hysterical pitch. "What is he talking about 90,000? What 90,000? "Shut up, Jenny," Kyle hissed, yanking his arm away. "Oh, she doesn't know about that part either," I said, stepping toward them. "She only knew about the house. You didn't tell her about the 10,000 in cash you took from my safe, or the 80,000 you drained from my savings account, the account I set up for her in case she ever needed it." I looked at my daughter. "He told you it was a loan, didn't he? An investment? He didn't tell you he had already stolen it." Jenny looked like she was going to be sick. She backed away from Kyle, shaking her head. No, Kyle. You said we were borrowing it." "He had to steal it, Jenny," I said, my voice relentless. "Because he's desperate. He's not the man you think he is. You see, I had Mr. Thorne here do a little research while I was waiting for you." I walked over to the large desk. Thorne slid a single file folder toward me. I didn't even open it. I just tapped the cover. "You think he's an investment banker? He hasn't been an investment banker for 2 years. He was fired for embezzlement, stealing from his clients. A small-time thief who got caught." "That's a lie!" Kyle shouted, his voice cracking. "Is it?" I asked. "Then where do you go every morning, Kyle? You're not meeting clients. You're meeting bookies. You're a compulsive gambler. And you are in very, very deep." Jenny was openly sobbing now, her hands over her mouth. "Kyle, you promised. You promised you stopped." "He never stopped," I said, my voice like ice. He just got worse. Mr. Thorne's investigator was very thorough. He found the men you owe money to, Kyle. The unofficial ones, the ones who don't care about your credit score. I paused, letting the weight of it land on him. $214,000 due tomorrow. Or they break your legs. Or maybe they break Jenny's. Kyle was trembling, his bluff completely gone, replaced by the raw terror of a cornered animal. You can't. So you see, Jenny, I said, turning my back on him, focusing only on my daughter. He was desperate. The $90,000 was just a drop in the bucket, the house that would have covered the rest. He had to have it. He had to have it to save his own skin. I didn't know. She wept. I didn't know about the debt. I didn't know about the insurance. Oh, God. She stopped. I stopped. I turned back to her slowly. The insurance? I asked, my voice deadly quiet. What insurance, Jenny? Her eyes widened in horror. She had said it. She had said the one thing I was waiting for. No, I said, stepping closer. Please continue. What insurance policy were you talking about? Kyle lunged not at me, but at her. I told you to shut your stupid mouth, he screamed, grabbing her arm. Get your hands off her, one of my security men said, stepping forward. It's all right, gentlemen, I said, raising a hand. He won't do anything. He's just a rat in a trap. I looked at Kyle. You're right, Jenny. He didn't tell you everything. But he didn't tell me about the insurance either. Mr. Thorne's investigator found that one all on his own. I walked back to the desk and picked up a second piece of paper. I held it up. A term life insurance policy for $500,000, taken out 6 weeks ago, the day after I confirmed my flight to Vancouver. The insured, Diane Cole. My wife, Jenny, collapsed. She didn't faint. She just folded her, legs gave out, and she sank to the marble floor in a heap of sobs. And the beneficiary, I continued, my eyes locked on Kyle, is not me, not even Jenny. The beneficiary is a corporation, Lawson Developments, LLC. I let the paper drift from my hand to the floor. You weren't just trying to steal from me, Kyle. You were going to collect the house, the cash that was just your appetizer. The main course was $500,000. All you needed was for Diane to die. A tragic, unfortunate accident. The confused old wife of a grieving husband, locking herself in the basement while he was away. Who would ever question it? Jenny was screaming now, a primal, horrible sound. No, Kyle, you said you'd let her go. You said it was just for a few days. You said you'd leave her food. You promised me. Kyle's face contorted, the mask of the handsome investment banker finally ripping away, revealing the monster underneath. He looked at Jenny, who was crawling on the floor, and he snarled. She was a useless old woman. She was in the way. It was perfect. If you hadn't messed it up, if that old fool hadn't come home early, we'd be rich. We'd be free. But you were too weak. You ruined everything. I looked at him, at the hatred in his eyes, the total lack of remorse. Thank you, Kyle, I said. He froze, confused by my calmness. Thank you for that, I said. That was the last piece I needed. Mr. Thorne, did you get that? Elias Thorne pressed a button on his desk intercom. The recording is secure, Mr. Cole. The audio is crystal clear. Kyle's face imploded. He looked from the intercom to Thorne, to me. You, he whispered. You set me up. You set yourself up, son, I said. You just confessed to conspiracy to commit murder in front of 4 witnesses and a digital recorder. I turned to my daughter, who was staring at me from the floor, her face a mask of tears and horror. And you, Jenny, you just confessed to being an accomplice. Kyle's face was a mask of pure reptilian hatred. He was no longer the smooth-talking investment banker. He was a cornered rat ready to bite. He looked at me, then at Jenny, who was still sobbing on the floor. He spat at me. You did this. You with your games. You're the one who set this up. I ignored him. I looked only at my daughter. She was the one who mattered. She was the one who had held the key, the one who had betrayed my trust. Kyle was just a parasite. But she was my blood. Jenny, I said, my voice quiet, cutting through her sobs. She looked up, her face a mess of tears and mascara. He called you stupid. He said you were too weak to see the plan. Was he right? She looked up, her face a mess of tears and mascara. What plan? I thought. I thought it was just the house. Just the 80,000. Kyle laughed, a short, ugly, barking sound. You really are that dumb, aren't you? You thought we were going through all that trouble for $80,000? That's pocket change. Shut up, Kyle, I said. But the damage was done. Jenny's head snapped toward him. What? What do you mean all that trouble, Kyle? What did you do? He took out an insurance policy, I said, my voice cold and flat. I picked up the single sheet of paper from Thorne's desk, the one the investigator had found. I let it drift from my hand, landing on the floor in front of her. She stared at it. Her eyes scanned the page. Her breath hitched. Term life insurance, Diane Cole, she whispered. Beneficiary, Lawson Developments LLC, $500,000. She didn't get it at first. She was still too slow. Still my foolish, trusting daughter. It's an investment policy, she stammered, looking from me to Kyle. For the business, right, Kyle? It's just normal business. Kyle just sneered at her, saying nothing, letting her hang. No, Jenny, I said gently, as if explaining a complex math problem to a child. It's not. You don't take out a $500,000 policy on your stepmother's life, right before you plan to lock her in a basement. You do it because you don't expect her to come out of the basement. The realization hit her like a physical blow. She went rigid. She stopped crying. She looked at the paper. Then she looked at Kyle, the man she had married, the man she had betrayed her family for. You, she whispered. You weren't just keeping her out of the way. You were killing her. She was a useless old woman, and she was in the way. Kyle finally roared, his composure gone, replaced by pure, ugly rage. It was perfect. The old man is gone. She has a tragic accident. We get the house, we get the cash, and we get the insurance payout. We would have been set free, but you, with your weak stomach, you ruined it. Jenny pushed herself up from the floor. She was no longer crying. She looked dead, numb. You lied to me, she said, her voice flat. You told me it was a property deal. You told me it was about the house. It was about the house, he yelled, and the money and the insurance. It was about everything. You just didn't need to know the details because you're too stupid and weak to handle them. So, you used me, she said. You used me to get the key. You used me to get the combination to the safe. You used me to lock the door. I did what I had to do. And the money? He asked, her voice trembling. The $80,000. You told me. You told me you needed that for the investment. You said it was a business deal. It was a business deal, you idiot. A bet. A sure thing. A bet? I interjected, stepping forward. That's what you told her. Not that you owed $214,000 to loan sharks who were planning to break your legs tomorrow. You didn't mention that part, did you, Kyle? Jenny's head snapped to me. What? What did you say? He lied to you, Jenny, I said, my voice calm. He hasn't had a job in 2 years. He's a compulsive gambler. He's been living off your credit cards, the credit cards I have been paying. He's a parasite. And when his debts got too big, he decided to cash in his last asset. You and your confused old father's family. Jenny looked at Kyle. He wasn't even denying it. He was just breathing heavily, his eyes darting between me and the guards trapped. You told me, she whispered, her voice breaking. You told me they were threatening us. You told me if I didn't help, they would hurt me. They would hurt Dad. So you did it, I said. You locked Diane in the basement to save him. I was scared, she screamed, the confession finally bursting out of her, aimed not at me, but at him. He told me it was the only way. He told me it was just for a few days. He swore he would go back and leave her food. He swore he would let her go the second the deal was done. He said it was just to keep her safe, to keep her quiet. I didn't know about the insurance. I didn't know he was. He was letting her die. She turned on him. All her fear, all her shame, all her stupid blind love twisting into a singular, focused rage. She was no longer my daughter. She was a woman betrayed. She lunged at him, clawing at his face, screaming a sound that was not human. You lied to me. You were going to let her die. You were going to make me a murderer. You. Kyle shoved her hard. She fell backward, sprawling across the marble floor in her expensive, foolish clothes. You are a murderer. He spat at her, his face red, his eyes bulging. You were just too stupid to see it. You were in on it from the start. You locked the door. You helped me. You're just as guilty as I am. He was right, and she knew it. That was the truth that finally broke her. She stopped screaming. She just lay on the cold floor, her body racked with sobs, completely and utterly destroyed. She had been used. She had been a tool, a key to the house, a key to the safe, and now a convenient scapegoat. Kyle looked at her, then at me. His chest was heaving. He was finished. His alliance was gone. His cover was blown. His wife was now his accuser. I looked at Thorne. He nodded. We had it all. The complete motive. The conspiracy, the confession, the coercion, and the final fatal break. Jenny, I said, my voice quiet. She looked at me from the floor, her eyes hollow. He didn't just lie about the insurance, I said. He lied about the debt. He didn't tell you he was fired for embezzlement 2 years ago. He didn't tell you he's been living off my money through your credit cards this entire time. He's a thief, a gambler, and a liar. And you were his last best bet. She closed her eyes. She didn't say another word. She just lay on the cold floor broken. The alliance was not just fractured, it was annihilated. I let the echo of their confessions hang in the vast, silent room. Jenny remained a broken heap on the marble floor, her body shaking with silent, agonizing sobs. She was destroyed, a tool that had been used and discarded. Kyle was a different animal. He was breathing heavily, his face mottled purple. The fear was gone, replaced by the cornered, rabid fury of a man with nothing left to lose. He was trapped, and he knew it. The 2 large men in suits, my security team, had taken half a step forward, their hands clasped. They were a solid wall. I turned away from my daughter. Her part in this was tragic. Her choices were weak. But he was the architect. He was the parasite. I walked back toward the wall of glass, looking down at the city lights. You know, Kyle, I said, my voice calm, almost conversational. The most pathetic part of this whole ugly mess isn't the forgery. It isn't even the insurance policy. It's the price. I turned back to him. He looked up, his eyes narrowed, full of venom. You were willing to coordinate the starvation and death of a good woman, my wife, for what? $90,000 in cash? A $700,000 house? You are a small-time, desperate man, Kyle. You didn't even know the real stakes. That's a lie. Dumb. He spat, his voice hoarse. You don't know anything about my situation. Those were business loans. It was just business. Were they? I asked. Business loans? Do business loans usually require you to meet in dark suburban parking lots at 2 a.m.? Do business partners text you photographs of your own front door just as a friendly reminder? Do they give you a 48-hour deadline before they come to collect? Kyle's face went from purple to a sickly pale white. The blood drained from it. He hadn't just been caught by me. He realized I knew about them. How? How do you know that? He whispered. Mr. Thorne's investigator is very, very good at his job, I said. He didn't just look at your bank records, Kyle. He looked at everything. Your burner phone records, your text messages. He found your bookie. And then he found the men your bookie sold your debt to the Volkov brothers. Am I correct? Kyle stopped breathing. I saw him physically recoil at the name. He was terrified. $214,000, I said, letting the numbers settle in the quiet room. Due tomorrow, or they were going to start with your kneecaps. Or maybe they were going to start with Jenny's. That's why you were so desperate, wasn't it? That's why you couldn't wait. That's why you had to have the house sale now. He didn't answer. He just stared at me, his mind racing visibly, trying to find an escape route, a lie, anything. He found nothing. You see, I continued, walking slowly toward him, my shoes clicking on the marble. You had a very big, very violent problem. And you thought my money, my house, and Diane's insurance, you thought that was the solution. You thought you could steal your way out of the hole you dug. He finally found his voice a desperate, snarling laugh. It doesn't matter. It's over. You've ruined the sale. You've ruined everything. They're still going to come for me. They'll find me and you. You think you're safe now? They'll find you too. They'll find Jenny. You just signed our death warrants, you old fool. He was trying to threaten me, still trying to find leverage. No, Kyle, I said softly. I don't think they will. He frowned, his bravado faltering. What? I told you, Mr. Thorne is a very thorough man. He's also a very good negotiator. When his investigator found out about your predicament, I asked him to make a call. A call? I'm a businessman, Kyle, I said. I see problems, and I find efficient solutions. Your debt was a problem. It was making you sloppy, violent, and unpredictable. It was a risk to my daughter and a risk to my wife. So I decided to solve it. What? What did you do? He stammered, the realization of what I was saying dawning on his face. I had Mr. Thorne reach out to the Volkov brothers' associates. I explained the situation. I told them I had a vested interest in a small-time gambler named Kyle Lawson. They were very receptive. They don't like complications. They don't like police. And your plan, Kyle, was bringing a lot of police. I paused, letting him absorb the full weight of it. They were quite happy to liquidate your account, I said. They don't like long-term, high-risk clients who bring that much heat. They prefer a sure thing. Liquidate. What? Did you pay them? I made them an offer they couldn't refuse, Kyle. I bought your debt. All of it. The bookies, the loan sharks, every last penny. Mr. Thorne wired the full $214,000 to an offshore account this morning. The transaction cleared an hour ago. I reached into the inner pocket of my suit jacket. I pulled out my checkbook, not the one from the local Atlanta bank. This one was bound in dark blue leather, embossed with the simple single-word logo of my holding company. So you see, I said, walking to the massive mahogany desk, you don't owe them anything anymore. Their problem is solved. I sat down in my high-backed leather chair, the chairman's chair. I looked at him, a predator, looking at its prey, now firmly caught in the trap. You owe me. The color drained from his face. He understood finally the true depth of the hole he was in. He was no longer in debt to violent, predictable thugs. He was in debt to me, a man he couldn't threaten, couldn't manipulate, and couldn't possibly escape. I can't, he stammered, his body deflating. I don't have that kind of money. You know I don't. You just stopped me from getting it. I know, I said calmly. That's what makes this so satisfying. You destroyed my family. You tried to murder my wife. You turned my daughter into a monster. All for money you didn't even have to pay, a debt you couldn't manage. I opened the checkbook. I took a heavy gold-plated pen from the desk stand. But I'm a reasonable man, Kyle. I like my accounts balanced. I want to be paid. I want my $214,000. I looked up at him, my gaze flat and hard as steel. Pay me now. He just stared, his mouth open, his entire world collapsing in on itself. He had nothing. No money. No house. No insurance payout. No wife. He was trapped in a glass tower 30 stories up, owned body and soul by the man he had tried to destroy. I can't, he whispered. I have nothing. You're wrong, I said. You still have one thing left to give. One thing left to pay me with. He looked up, a flicker of pathetic, desperate hope in his eyes. He thought I meant I would force him to work. He thought this was still about money. I don't need your labor, Kyle, I said, reading his thoughts. I'm not interested in your kneecaps either. I'm not the Volkov brothers. I paused, letting him hang on the edge. I'm interested in justice. I looked past him, past his ruined, terrified face. I looked past my weeping daughter on the floor. I looked toward the brushed steel elevator doors at the end of the long lobby. And I believe your payment, I said, my voice dropping, has just arrived. Kyle stared at me, his mind finally catching up to the reality of the room. He was no longer a player. He was a piece on a board he didn't even know existed. His face, which had been contorted with rage, crumpled into something else. Desperation. Payment, he whispered. What? What payment? I told you I have nothing. You stopped the sale. I have nothing. You're still not listening, Kyle, I said, my voice quiet. I told you I am not the Volkov brothers. I am not interested in your money. I am not interested in your kneecaps. I already bought your debt. Financially, you and I are settled. You owe me nothing. He looked at me, his eyes wide with a pathetic, flickering hope. He thought he was free. He thought this was some kind of sick psychological power play. Then what is this? What do you want? I want my accounts balanced, I said. And your debt was never just financial. Your debt is to Diane for every second she spent starving in that basement. Your debt is to my daughter for every lie you told her, for every piece of her soul you corrupted. Your debt is to me for betraying my trust. And that kind of debt, Kyle, it isn't paid with money. It's paid with time. Kyle frowned, not understanding. And right on cue, we all heard it. The soft mechanical ding of the private elevator arriving at the penthouse. Kyle and Jenny both flinched. They weren't expecting anyone else. Jenny, who had been a heap on the floor, pushed herself up onto her elbows, her face a mask of tear-streaked terror. Who is that? She whispered. Who else is coming? Kyle looked at my two security men, then at Thorne, then at me. Who is that? He demanded, trying to find a scrap of his old authority. I believe, Kyle, I said, my voice calm and steady as the brushed steel doors slid open with a soundless whisper. "That is your payment arriving now." Two men stepped out of the elevator. They were not wearing expensive suits. They were wearing the dark blue practical uniforms of the Atlanta Police Department. One was a tall, older black man, his face carved from granite. I knew him. Detective Miller. The other was a younger uniformed officer. Jenny saw them and let out a sound, a high-pitched, strangled noise. Kyle's body went completely slack. The fight, the anger, the panic, it all just evaporated. He had been outplayed, outthought, and outmaneuvered at every single turn. He was finished. Detective Miller stepped onto the marble floor. His eyes took in the scene in a single practiced sweep. The two massive security guards, Thorne standing impassively at his desk, Jenny a sobbing wreck on the floor, Kyle looking like a ghost, and me standing by the window in my $3,000 suit. "Mr. Cole," Miller said, his voice a deep baritone. He nodded at me, a sign of old, unspoken respect. "You called?" "Thank you for coming on such short notice, Detective," I said. "The situation has resolved itself just as I anticipated." Kyle finally found his voice. It was a last, pathetic gamble. "Officer, thank God. You have to help me. This man, he's holding us here. He's threatening me. He's crazy. He's some kind of billionaire." Detective Miller ignored him completely. He looked at Kyle, then at Jenny, as if they were trash he had been called to clean up. "And these are the individuals?" he asked me. "That is Kyle Lawson," I said, the words heavy. "And that is Jenny Cole Lawson, my daughter." Miller nodded slowly. He turned his full attention to Kyle. "Kyle Lawson, please stand up and place your hands behind your back." "What?" Kyle shrieked. "On what charge? I'm the victim here. He's threatening me. I haven't done anything." Detective Miller looked at him with profound, weary boredom. "We have a signed, detailed complaint from a Mrs. Diane Cole filed from her secure room at a private medical facility. We have bank records showing wire fraud and withdrawals matching your company's name. We have a copy of a fraudulent quitclaim deed filed with the county. We have a full confession from a local forger named Paul Hayes regarding his work for you." And he gestured to the large desk where Thorne was waiting. "I believe Mr. Thorne has a final piece of evidence for us." Thorne pressed a single button on his desk console. Kyle's voice, amplified by the office sound system, filled the vast room. Hateful, vicious. She was a useless old woman. She was in the way. It was perfect. If you hadn't messed it up, we'd be rich. Miller raised his eyebrows. "That's enough for me. Kyle Lawson, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, kidnapping in the first degree, forgery, and aggravated financial fraud against the elderly." The uniformed officer stepped forward, pulled Kyle's arms behind his back, and the sharp click, click, click of the handcuffs was the loudest sound in the room. Kyle didn't fight. He was a hollow shell, but Jenny was not. As the officer reached for her, she scrambled across the floor, not toward Kyle, but toward me. She grabbed the leg of my pants, her nails digging into the expensive wool. "Dad, Dad, no!" she screamed, her voice shattering. "Please don't let them." It was him. It was all him. You heard him. He threatened me. He lied to me. He made me do it. "Dad, please. I'm your daughter. I'm your little girl. Please, Daddy." It was a pathetic, horrifying spectacle. She was clinging to me, sobbing, her face streaked with tears and makeup, looking up at me with the same eyes she had when she was 5 and had broken a vase. I looked down at her, cold, empty. The space inside my chest where my heart used to be for her was just a void. "Detective," I said, my voice unchanged. Miller looked at Jenny on the floor with deep, profound disgust. "Ma'am, you need to stand up." "No," she shrieked, clinging tighter. "Dad, tell them. Tell them I was scared. Tell them I'm the victim here. Tell them to let me go. Please, Daddy, I'll do anything. I'll pay you back." I didn't know he was going to kill her. "You didn't?" I asked, my voice soft. I looked at Detective Miller. "Her confession is on that tape as well, Detective. You said you'd let her go. You said it was just for a few days. She was an accomplice. She knew." Miller nodded at the uniformed officer. "Take her too." The officer had to physically pry her hands off my leg. She fought. She screamed. She was a wild animal thrashing on the marble floor. "You can't do this. I'm his daughter," she shrieked as they hauled her to her feet. "He's supposed to protect me. He's my father. You'll regret this. You'll be all alone, you old bastard. You'll die alone. They dragged her and the silent, ghost-like Kyle to the elevator. The steel doors slid shut, cutting off her screams. The penthouse was quiet again. Thorne walked over to me, holding the small digital recorder. A perfect confession, Mr. Cole. Both of them. I walked back to the window. I looked down at the city 30 stories below. I knew in a few moments I would see the blue and red lights of the police cars pull away from the curb. I thought about what Kyle had said. He thought his options were the Volkov brothers or me. He thought the choice was between a quick, violent death or a long, painful financial one. He thought he was playing his game. He never even considered the third option. He was wrong, Elias, I said, watching the police car merge into traffic. The choice was never between the gangsters and me. The choice was always between paying his debt in money or paying it in time. I looked at the empty elevator. That, I said, was option 2. The penthouse, with its cold marble and skyscraper views, felt like a fortress. But this place, this quiet, sterile room in Alistair's private clinic, felt like a confessional. I had won the war up in that glass tower, but this was where I had to face the casualties. Alistair had met me in the hall. His face was grim. She's stable, Harrison. The fluids are working. Her kidney function is improving. She's a very strong woman, but she's quiet. She hasn't said much beyond the initial report. She just stares out the window. I nodded, my throat tight. Is she? She's a survivor, Alistair said, stopping me before I could ask the question I was really afraid of. But the woman who came in here is not the same one who used to live in your house. Be prepared for that. I pushed the door open. The room was bathed in the soft afternoon light of Buckhead. It smelled faintly of antiseptic and expensive soap. Diane was sitting up in the bed, not looking at the door, but staring out the window at the trees below. She was clean. Her hair had been washed and brushed, though it was still painfully thin. She wore a simple, soft hospital gown. She had color in her face. She looked like Diane again, but smaller, harder. Diane, I said softly. She turned her head slowly. Her eyes met mine. They were not the warm, laughing eyes I had known for 25 years. They were still clear, and as cold as the marble in my office. Harry, she said. It wasn't a question. It wasn't a greeting. It was a statement of fact. It's over, baby, I said, my voice thick. I pulled a chair close to her bed. It's done. They're arrested. Kyle and Jenny. They're both in jail. She just nodded once. Her eyes went back to the window. Alistair told me, she said, her voice a monotone. The police were here. They took my official statement. The silence in the room stretched. It was heavy, uncomfortable. I had faced down Kyle's animal rage. But this stillness from Diane, it terrified me. I needed to fix this. I needed to make her understand. I needed to find a way back to the world we had before. He twisted her up. Diane, I said, leaning forward, my hands clasping my knees. You have to know that he manipulated her. I had Thorne run a full report. He's a monster, a gambler in debt for over $200,000 to loan sharks. He was fired 2 years ago. He was desperate. He was threatening her. I was talking too fast. I knew I was. I was making excuses. He told her they were threatening to hurt her, I continued. To hurt me. He told her this was the only way. He lied about the insurance policy. She didn't know he didn't know the full plan. She's not a monster, Diane. She's weak. She was just terrified. I finished my own words, sounding hollow in the quiet room. I waited for her to nod, to agree, to give me something. Diane turned her head from the window. She looked at me for a long, long time. I could see every line on her face, the lines of our life together, the new, hard lines of the last 2 weeks. Weak, she said. Her voice was not a whisper anymore. It was low, and it was sharp as a razor. Is that what you call it, Harry? Weak. Diane, he's a professional con man. He lied to. He didn't just lie to her, Harry, she interrupted, and her voice was so cold it stopped my heart. He seduced her. He didn't just threaten her with violence. He promised her a fantasy, a life she thought she deserved, a life where I was the only thing in the way. No, I insisted, shaking my head. She's my daughter. She's not. She's your daughter, Diane agreed, her eyes never leaving mine. But she is not a child. She is a 40-year-old woman. And I was in that basement for 14 days, Harry. I had nothing but time. Time to think. Time to remember every visit, every look, every single time she looked at me with that impatience in her eyes. She took a sip of water from the glass by her bed. Her hand was perfectly steady. Do you think he forced her to lock that door, Harry? Do you think he put a gun to her head? No, she did it. She was scared. I was scared. Diane's voice rose for the first time, cracking with a sudden, hot fury that stunned me. I was down there for 2 days, screaming until my throat was raw. I banged on that door until my knuckles were bloody and splintered. I begged her, Harry, not Kyle her. I yelled, "Jenny, please! It's me! It's Diane! Let me out! It's a mistake!" Tears started to roll down my own face. I didn't want to hear this. And do you know what she did, Harry? Diane continued, her voice dropping back to that icy whisper. She came back on the 3rd day. I heard her footsteps on the kitchen floor. I heard her stop right on the other side of that door. I put my face to the wood. I begged her, "Jenny, thank God. Please, honey, open the door." I closed my eyes. "What did she do, Diane?" "I heard her sigh," Diane said, her voice breaking, but not with sadness, with contempt. She sighed like I was an annoyance. And then she said, "I'm sorry, Diane, but this is for the best. It's just business." And then, Harry, Diane's face contorted. Then she turned on the radio in the kitchen. She turned it on loud classical music. She turned it on to drown me out. My heart stopped. She had come back. She had heard her begging, and she had turned up the music. "She's not weak, Harry," Diane said, her voice flat and final. "Kyle was the architect. He drew the plans. But Jenny was the one with the hammer. She was the one who drove the nails. She checked on me. She heard me screaming, and she walked away. The food?" I stammered, thinking of the cookie wrappers. "She left you food." "Yes," Diane said with a bitter laugh that was more terrible than a scream. 3 bottles of water and 2 packages of cookies for 2 weeks. That wasn't mercy, Harry. That was calculation. That was just enough to make sure I didn't die too fast, to make sure I suffered, to make sure it looked accidental. She didn't want to just kill me. She wanted to erase me, and she did it. The Jenny you knew. She's been gone for a very long time. You just refused to see it. I sat back in the chair. There was nothing left to say. The last desperate thread of hope, I had the idea that my daughter was a victim, that she was redeemable. It was gone. Diane had taken it, held it up to the light, and shown me the rot inside. I had been trying to find an excuse for Jenny, but the truth was, I was just trying to find an excuse for myself. An excuse for my own blindness. For my own failure. I had raised a monster. I had loved her, spoiled her, protected her, and in doing so, I had hidden the truth of her from myself. "You're right," I whispered. The words felt like broken glass in my throat. "You're right. She's not weak. She's gone." Diane just nodded once, her face grim. She turned back to the window. The last part of my old life, the part that was a father, died in that sterile, quiet hospital room. Now, there was only the cold, hard truth of what came next. 6 months. That is how long it took for the wheels of justice to grind. 6 months of legal motions, of depositions, of lawyers in expensive suits arguing over details. The trial itself was a media sensation in Atlanta. The basement plot, they called it. The story of the greedy, sociopathic daughter and her gambling, monstrous husband. I sat in the front row every single day. Beside me, Diane sat straight-backed and silent. She had regained her weight, but something in her eyes had been permanently extinguished. She wore simple, elegant clothes now. She no longer tried to blend in. She looked like the wife of a very rich man, and she stared at Jenny and Kyle with a quiet, bottomless hatred that was colder than any rage I could ever muster. Kyle tried his old tricks. He tried to charm the jury. He wore his best suit. He tried to claim it was all a business dispute that went horribly wrong. He tried to paint me as a manipulative, shadowy figure, but the evidence was too much. Thorne had given the prosecution everything. The forged deed, the wire fraud, the bank records, the testimony of the real estate agent, the canceled check from me to the Volkov brothers' associates proving his motive, and, of course, the audio recording from the penthouse. When the jury heard Kyle's voice, she was a useless old woman. She was in the way. It was perfect. It was over. But the final, devastating blow came from Jenny. To save herself, she did the only thing she had left to do. She turned on him. She took the stand, weeping, and painted herself as the ultimate victim. She told the court how Kyle had threatened her, how he had manipulated her, how he had preyed on her fear of his debts. She admitted to everything. She admitted to locking the door. She admitted to lying to me on the phone. She admitted to being an accomplice to the fraud. Her confession aimed at saving her own skin buried Kyle completely. The jury was out for 45 minutes. I watched Kyle's face when the foreman read the verdict, guilty on all counts. His arrogance finally shattered, revealing the small, terrified man underneath. The judge was not merciful. "Mr. Lawson," he said, his voice ringing with contempt, "you are a predator. You preyed on the weak. You preyed on your own family. I sentence you to the maximum allowed by this state, 20 years. Kyle just stared. 20 years. As for you, Ms. Lawson, the judge said, turning to my daughter, your testimony was self-serving, but it was useful. You are just as guilty. But you are also perhaps the most tragic figure in this room. You had everything. You had a father who loved you, and you threw it all away for him." He paused. 10 years. Jenny just collapsed, a low, animal wail escaping her as the guards pulled her up. I waited a month. I let her settle into her new home, a 6 times 8 foot concrete cell. Then I went to see her one last time. The visiting room was loud, filled with the murmur of other broken families. She was on the other side of the thick glass, looking pale and thin in a drab gray jumpsuit. Her hair was stringy. The fire was gone from her. She picked up the phone. "Dad," she whispered, her voice raw from crying. "You came." "I came to say goodbye, Jenny," I said, my voice flat. "Dad, please," she begged, the tears instantly welling up. "Don't do this. 10 years. It's not forever. I'm still your daughter. I'm still your little girl. We can fix this. I'll pay you back. I'll work. I'm so sorry, Daddy. He made me do it." I looked at her. I looked at this 40-year-old woman still trying to play the part of a child. "No, Jenny," I said. "He didn't make you do anything. He threatened me." "He did," I agreed. "And you were scared. But that's not why you did it. You did it because you were greedy. You did it because you believed his lies. You did it because you wanted the easy money." I leaned closer to the glass. Diane was screaming. "Jenny, I heard the recordings from the front door camera. She was screaming your name. She was begging you for help. And you went into the kitchen and you turned on the radio. You turned up the music to drown her out." She recoiled as if I had slapped her. How did you?" "I know everything, Jenny. I know you were the one who went back on the 3rd day, not Kyle. You heard her begging. You heard her tell you she was thirsty and you walked away. You left her to die." "No," she shrieked. I was scared. I didn't know what to do. "You knew exactly what to do," I said. "You just chose him. You chose the money. You are not weak, Jenny. You are just rotten all the way through." "Why are you here, Dad?" she finally whispered, the fight gone, her face hollow. "Are you here to just torture me?" "No," I said. "I'm here to answer the question that's really bothering you." She looked up. "You're not wondering if I still love you. You're wondering about the money. You're sitting there doing the math. 10 years, you'll be 50. You're wondering if your rich father will still be around for you to inherit from. You're wondering if the golden goose is still worth waiting for." Her silence was my answer. "Well, I'm here to tell you, Jenny, the money is gone." "What?" "The house in Atlanta, I sold it. The accounts, I closed them. Cole Holdings, it's being dissolved." You're lying," she stammered. "I'm not. I am severing you. You will not receive one more dollar from me. Not now. Not ever. When you get out of here, you will have nothing. Nothing. No house. No trust fund. No inheritance. You are disowned." "You can't," she screamed, banging on the glass. "I'm your family. I'm your only child. The law." "The law," I said, my voice flat and final, "says a man can do whatever he wants with his own money. And Mr. Thorne is very, very good at making my wishes legally binding." I stood up from the stool. "Goodbye, Jenny." "No, Dad. Dad, don't leave me. I'm sorry, Daddy. I'm sorry." I turned my back on the glass. I walked out of that prison, her screams echoing behind me, and I did not look back. I went home. But home was no longer the small brick rancher in Atlanta. I had sold it for cash to a developer who tore it down the next day. I erased it. Diane and I moved. We packed 2 suitcases each and left that city behind. We live in Carmel, California now. Our house is not a small, hidden rancher. It is a modern structure of glass and steel perched on a cliff overlooking the Pacific Ocean, the kind of house Kyle and Jenny only dreamed of. Diane is in the garden right now. She's planting roses. She hums when she gardens. I haven't heard her hum in years. Elias Thorne flew out last week. We sat on the deck watching the seals on the rocks below. He brought the final papers. I signed the last page of my new will. It is done, he said. The Cole Family Foundation is now the sole beneficiary of your entire estate. And Jenny? I asked, just to be sure. She is mentioned by name, Thorne confirmed. She and any of her issue are explicitly and permanently disinherited. I nodded. The Foundation's official charter. The Diane Cole Fund for Victims of Domestic and Elder Abuse. My daughter wanted my money so badly she tried to steal a house and $90,000. In the end, her actions ensured that my entire fortune, all of it, will now be used to help every person in the world who is a victim of someone just like her. She didn't just lose her freedom, she lost an empire. And me, I lost a daughter. But Diane and I, we finally found our peace. This story teaches us that true wealth is not measured by the money we accumulate, but by the integrity we maintain and the respect we earn. It's a hard reminder that greed can corrupt even the closest family bonds, blinding people to the value of love and loyalty. But it also shows that strength often lies hidden. Underestimating someone based on their simple appearance can be a fatal mistake, because the quietest person in the room is often the one holding all the power. True justice isn't just about punishment, it's about reclaiming your peace and dignity. What would you have done if you were in Harrison's place? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories.